Hi, everybody. This is Virginia Milner coming to you for the DeKalb County Library System, and we are in the midst of Women's History Month. So I thought we would do something. I try to do something every year in recognition of that. But today I wanted to do something that I discovered very recently that was really special. I knew that there were colors for Women's History Month. I didn't know the whole history about it, but I since discovered that those colors, purple, white, and green, are very significant. Back in the early 1900s, when the suffragette movement was just getting underway, they needed a way to communicate and make a political statement that wasn't, especially if they were society people, that wasn't disruptive. So they came up with a little brand, I guess you could call it, or as we would call it now, of colors that they would wear: green for hope, white for purity, and violet or purple for dignity. And the funny part about that is that the beginning letters of each of those colors stands for green, white, violet, give women votes. Thought that was brilliant. So we're going to make a piece. Of course, we're not going to be using amethyst or garnet or pearls or diamonds or peridot or emeralds, which they would use because, I'm not a socialite. I don't have that kind of cash. But I just thought that was such a neat thing for them to be able to do, um, just undercover, sort of. And so anyway, we're going to be using seed beads in those colors. We're going to be using purple, white, and green seed beads. I have a couple of shades of those colors. So those of you who get kits, that was the European, those were the European colors. When it came to the United States, excuse me, they changed the white to gold. So those of you who get kits will get one of those sets of colors, either green, white, and um, purple, or green, gold, and purple. So anyway, just a little history lesson. I've been running around. We have this thing here called Phoenix Flies, and every March of every year, you can do all kinds of free tours all around the city. And I love history and I love museums. And so pretty much everything I've done has had to do with some history within a museum. So I am just just having the best time of my life. Anyway, so let's go ahead and get started on the reason why we're here is to make some lovely jewelry. So what you're going to need are your usual tools, your round nose pliers. They are, the barrels are round all the way around. They start larger at the bottom and taper up to a tip, to a almost a point near the tip. Then we have our square or flat nose pliers. Now, people get a little confused about these because they're slightly rounded on the outside. And when I say pick up the round ones, they go for these. But if you put them side by side, you can see the difference. And the biggest difference is the fact that I don't know why I always end up with a frog in my throat when I'm doing these. On the inside of your pliers, it's completely flat. Now you want to avoid getting the kind that has those grips on them. Yes, it makes it easier to grip your wire, but it also can put marks in it as well. And I see people on YouTube making jewelry with those pliers that have those grips in there. And I think, how are they doing that without ruining their wire? So you might want to stay away from those. And somebody said that it's kind of hard to tell when you're buying it online, but usually they have pictures that you can do close-ups and you can easily see those little ridges on the inside. And if they don't have those pictures, go get them someplace else. But I would avoid using those with the soft kind of wire that we're using with our projects. The third thing that you need is a wire cutter. Now, these are also considered pliers. they, they cut wire. So all three of these things are pliers. This does exactly what it says. It cuts your wire. And the last thing that you're going to need is a ruler to measure out your 20 gauge wire, which is what we're going to use today. So that's it. Let's go ahead and get down here to the mat and get started on our project. Okay, I forgot one more item that you need, and that is some kind of a thin cylindrical item that we're going to use to wrap our beads around. Now, you can use a little knitting needle or something like that, but something that's very thin that's no bigger than the kind of halfway point down your round nose pliers. You don't want it to be too big. Yeah, maybe a little more than halfway down your pliers would be fine, but it needs to be a lot longer than your pliers. So something like that. I don't think there are ink pens that are thin enough for this. So it'd probably be, I guess, a knitting needle would be the most common thing that you could find, unless you can find one of these bars that's very small. And this one is a 3, 4, about 4 centimeters. Um, so if you can find something like that, great. Otherwise, use a knitting needle. I think crochet needles might be a little too big, but something like that. Or maybe even some large wire, 16 gauge wire if you have some. Anyway, that's the other thing that you need. So now what I have done is cut 30 inches of 20 gauge wire. I cut it out because this is too long to show on camera. So this is 30 inches of 20 gauge wire that we're going to use to make this bar that we're going to wrap our beads around. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab my cylindrical item, and I'm going to give myself about an inch of wire, an inch tail of wire to hold on to. And then I'm going to wrap the long tail around my item here, around my little bar, 3 times. And I want those wraps very close together, nice and snug. And if you see any little spaces in there, like I can see some spaces, just use your pliers and squeeze them together and just work it until you can get it nice and close all the way around. And now once I've got that, I've got to go all the way over to the end here and load it up with beads. And I've got 3 different colors here. Purple, I've got a couple of colors of shades of green and white. Okay. It's funny, the purple in under my camera looks blue, and these are green, and you can't even tell. Looks a little different than the white, but cameras. Anyway, the other thing that really bugs me about seed beads is that they're usually dyed, and the darker the color, I mean, look at this, these dark purple ones. I don't care what brand I buy. When I take them off the string, the the color is wearing off. But the good thing about that is we're using the sides. The sides are what I want. And so they don't usually get hurt. So don't panic. Anyway, so what we're going to do is start loading this up with beads. You can do it any order that you like. You can put a bunch of purple ones together, then a bunch of white ones, then a bunch of green ones, or you can alternate. It's really up to you how you want to load them on your strand, but you're going to need a lot of them. So just get them all loaded up onto your 20 gauge wire in whatever order you would like. So it just occurs to me that you're going to have to sit here and watch me loading my wire up forever. Not forever, but it's a lot. it's going to be a lot of loading. So what I'm going to do is show you this. So I'm going to load up the rest of this with all of my beads until I run out of beads, and then I'm going to show you what to do next. So I think I'm going to do this off camera so that you don't have to sit here and watch me do this boring part of the project. And again, oops, again, you can do them any way you want. If you want to put two greens on, two white ones on, two purple ones on, or let me say I do two green, two white, and a purple, and then do another green, and then two purple, and two white. Whatever way you want to do it, because these are going to be wrapped. So the order doesn't really matter. It's entirely up to you how you put them on. It's going to come out different than it looks when you put them straight on the wire anyway. So it's going to be a mystery as to how they're going to end up when you're finished. Now, I am obviously just chit-chatting because I have to load all of these beads onto my wire. And I'm trying to make it so that you are not bored to death while I do it. So what I'm going to do now is go off camera and finish the list. We got a lot done, but I've still got all of these beads to put on my wire. So I'm going to go ahead, go off camera. I've said that 3 times and finish loading the wire. I will be back in just a couple of minutes. All right, I have strung all of these beads on until I have now about 8 inches of bare wire. Yes. So now what I'm going to do is wrap these beads around my cylindrical item. Now, what you can do is what I did was string all of the beads on and then wrap it around, or you could string a few on at a time and wrap and then string more on if that's easier for you, because this is going to be a little bit tricky. Now, what you want to do is make sure that these aren't too tight on this wire, because you're going to be wrapping them around this cylinder, and you don't want to crack any of your beads. So be aware of that. So I'm just going to wrap this around. I'm just holding it and wrapping. And I'm holding the end of this. I could put a little loop in it. Why don't I do that? Let's put a little loop in this so I don't have to hold this end. So I'm just going to take my pliers, just put a little loop, and now my beads won't fall off. And now I don't have to hold it so close. Okay, wrap that around. And notice how I'm holding it nice and close, putting my hands nice and close to the cylinder. And see, this is very tight. So I'm going to loosen that up a little bit so that it's not quite as tight. Because again, I need a nice close wrap around the cylinder, and I don't want to crack any of my beads. So I'm just going to leave that open, wrap that around, keep my eye on these beads so that they don't go flying. And just wrap that around. And when I need to, I'll just kind of pull the beads apart a little bit so that it's not tight enough to crack any of my seed beads. And if we were using crystals, you'd have to be just as, if not more careful, because all of these beads are made of glass and they can break. So let me scoot these back a little. Get that a little more space. Let me get that little bend out of there that was holding my beads on. Straighten it out. slide these down a little bit. There. So now I can work with that a little bit better. I don't want it completely loose, but I also don't want it so tight that my beads will crack. I'm just going to fold that down, push them down a little bit at a time. And again, you can put the beads on a little at a time if you'd rather do that than having all of these beads on here. Loop in the end. There, that should work. Slide a few beads down. Slide a few more beads down. And I'm just pushing them down so that I don't have too much space, too much wire showing in between my little beads. Okay, push some more beads down, around. Big space there, push those beads down. Wrap them around. Okay. And radio silence you're getting while I work. I think I've said this before, when it gets really quiet in my classrooms, I know they're all concentrating on, that's what they say, we're concentrating, which is a good thing because we want to, one of the goals that I have in my class is that people will hopefully be able to walk out wearing or with a completed um, item. I really want them to get their pieces done. And about 98% of the time, they do, if not more, which is very nice. Occasionally, I give them something that's really a big challenge, and some of them aren't able to finish, but that's very rare. I try to keep it kind of creator friendly. Now, I'll push some of these together. And every once in a while, you might want to look to see. Oh, yeah, nice. Now, I only want about 3 inches of bead for my bar. Tighten that up a bit. So you're going to make adjustments as you go. Tighten up my little beads around my cylinder. Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm going to keep going a little bit more. I think I've probably got a good 3 inches there. There we go. Get back over there. It's trying to slide off the end of my cylinder. Let's see what I've got so far. Ooh, yeah. I'm coming up on 3.5 inches. Let's keep going, shall we? Okay, a little bit more. Let's do a few more of these beads. I've got about 120 beads on here. So it does take quite a few beads. Pushing them together. Let me see if that's enough. I don't want it to be too ungainly. So that's about 3.5 inches. I can do the rest of these, and I don't think it's going to be that much more. There we go. And then I'm going to come down here and just kind of tighten it up a little bit. So I'm just wrapping it a little bit tighter around there. There. Oh, there's my little bar. Okay, so now once I've got my beads on, I'm going to take the bare wire and wrap it around the other side of my cylinder, just like I did on this side. So I'm going to wrap that around nice and snug. And again, I want the wraps to be close together 3 times. 1, 2, and 3. Nice. Push that in. There we go. So there's my little bar. So now I'm going to cut off the ends. And if you want more wraps, you can do more wraps. I would give it at least 2. But it just depends on how much silver or gold, which are the colors I'm going to be using, you want on each end. I think I'm going to give it one more wrap. 1, 2, 3. Give it one more wrap on this side. It looks like more like 3.5. Just going to go ahead and, yeah, cut that off. So once you have as many wraps as you want on there, you want to cut off the ends, these little tips. Notice how I held onto the tip so that it wouldn't go flying off to parts unknown. And then I'm going to take my square pliers. See this? These are little pieces of the purple bead. I don't know why it's always the dark ones. Anyway, I'm going to push down those little ends so that they're not sharp and sticking up. Yeah, little purple pieces of dye. Okay. Then I'm going to go to the other side and do the same thing. I'm going to give it one more wrap around. I think I have 4 wraps over here. So I'm going to give myself 4 wraps on this side. And I want to end it right there where it began. So the tip should be right here at the beginning of the wrap. Cut off that tip or that excess wire. There we go. And push down the little end. And let me push my little wires together. I'm just pushing them together nice and snug. There we go. And now I can take it off of my cylinder. Ah, look at that. That's going to be my little center, my little pendant on my necklace. And now all I need is chain. on each side. Now you can wear it just like that, or you can shape it. You can shape it any way you would like. Isn't that neat? You can give it a little shape, give it a little gentle curve. Anyway, I can play with it all day. But anyway, there's our little bar. Then you can shape it the way you want it to be. But before you do that, you need another piece of wire to feed through here so that you can attach it to your chain. You straighten that back out. And I'm going to grab a piece of wire. Now, the length of wire you need depends on how long your bar is. Now, mine is about 4 inches, I believe. Ooh, wow. Mine came out with the wrap wire tips to be about 4 3/4 inches. So what I'm going to need is about a half an inch on each side, in addition to my what did I say, 4 3/4? Yes, 4 3/4 inches. So that's going to be 5 3/4 inches. We'll just give myself about 6 inches of wire. So that's enough for whatever this measures out, plus a half an inch on each side. Okay. As a matter of fact, I would give yourself a little more wire. That way, if you make larger loops, you can make sure you have enough. So I have 4 3/4, 5 3/4. I'm going to give myself about 6.5 inches. So that gives me an extra 3/4 of an inch, just in case. Cut that off. Then I'm going to feed the wire through my beaded cylinder here that I just made. And I'm going to, actually, it would be easier before I feed that in, take that out of there, is to make a nice loop. So I'm going to grab my round nose pliers. I'm going to measure about half an inch from the end, put a bend in my wire, grab my round nose pliers, and I'm going to slide it down about a third of the way down my pliers, a third to a half. It depends on how big you want your loop to be, and it doesn't have to be that big because it's just going to fit in this little chain. All you're using it for is a connector. So I'm going to slide my wire in between the jaws of my pliers. I want to check and make sure that that tip, I can't feel the tip of that because I want to make a nice round loop. And if the tip of your wire is sticking out, then your loop is going to end up being a teardrop, which if you want a teardrop is perfectly fine. But I want a round circle. So I'm going to make sure that that tip is fully ensconced between the pliers. And then I'm going to hold on to the wire and start a turn with my pliers. And then without letting the wire shift or come out of the pliers, I'm going to open the pliers, reposition them back, and continue turning. Open, reposition, close, turn, open, reposition, turn until I have a loop. Boom, there's my little loop. There, open it up a little bit. And I want to check and make sure that the loop is bigger than the hole at the end of my cylinder. It is. So you don't want to make your loop way down here at the tip because it's going to be too small. It's just going to slide inside your cylinder. And you don't want that. So now that I have a loop on the end that will hold my cylinder in place, I'm going to slide my wire inside my beaded cylinder. and out the other side. There we go, just like that. And then I'm going to bend right at the tip or right at the end of my wire. I'm going to bend my wire back in order to make another loop. Now, at this point, if you don't want your cylinder to be as long as it is, you can squeeze the beads together a little bit and make your loop right against the end of the wraps. But I'm going to leave mine the way it is because I wanted it a little bit loose so that I can shape it a little bit. So I'm going to keep it relaxed. Then I'm going to bend my wire over to the side like so. Cut off down to about 1/2 inch like I did before. Grab my round nose pliers, slide my wire down about the same place I did before. Make sure that tip isn't sticking out and I can feel it, so it is. Scoot it back inside my pliers a little better. There we go. And I'm going to make my loop, same way I did before. Hold on to the wire, make a turn, open, reposition, clamp back down, turn, and keep doing that until I have my loop. There we go. Make sure it's closed. There. Okay, so there's my little cylinder. And now you can decide what you want to do with it. Do you want to kind of shape it a little bit? You can do that. Make it a little caterpillar or whatever you want it to be. Nice. Now all I need to do is attach it to a chain to make a necklace. That's it. All right, so what I'm going to do is grab a couple of jump rings. Oh, actually, I don't need my jump rings yet because this is an open loop. So I'm going to go down here to the little tip, grab my square pliers. I'm going to twist that to the side to open it. Put the last loop of my chain inside, or actually put the wire inside the last loop of my chain, like that. Slide that on there. Close it back up. You want to make sure it's nice and tight. No spaces in between there. Then go to the other side and do the same thing. Just open up your loop. Open it up to the side here. Grab my chain. Slide the last link down on the wire. Let that slide right inside that loop. And close. Make sure that tip is touching the rest of the wire so that your chain won't slide out. Okay, well, now my chain is on there. So now what do I do? Well, I need a clasp. I have to have one. So let's grab another piece of wire. It's going to make a very simple one this time. So I'm just going to grab 4 inches of wire. Actually, 3 inches. I don't need 4. 3 inches of wire. Grab my round nose pliers, and I'm going to make another loop, just like I did with my bar, except that I'm going to make a tiny one this time. So right here on the tip of my wire, I'm going to grab it with the tip of my pliers, make sure that the tip is not sticking out from between the pliers, and I'm going to make a tiny, tiny little loop. Just keep rotating until I have nice loop. I want the tip of my wire to be touching the rest of my wire. So there's my little loop. Then I'm going to go down here to the back of my pliers. Just slide that loop onto the back of my pliers here. Then I'm going to push it a little tiny bit away from the pliers so that the loop is sticking up maybe a 1/16 of an inch from my pliers. There. And then I'm going to take, this is the, where the loop is sticking out towards me. Then I'm going to take the straight edge of my wire and wrap it the opposite direction. I'm wrapping it around and back, and I want it to touch the head of my loop. Just bring it around like so. Yeah. So now that's what I have. Then I'm going to go down here to the bottom. I'm going to cut my wire down to a 1/2 inch between the loop and the tip. So I'm going to measure 1/2 inch. I'm going to cut that off. I'm going to go a little less than 1/2 inch. Yeah, cut that off. Grab my round nose pliers, and I'm going to make a loop. So this loop is going in this direction. I'm going to make the other loop the other direction. So I'm going to slide down about 1/4 of the way down my pliers. So you can just divide it off 1, 2, 3, 4. Go about 1/4 of the way down my pliers and make a small loop. Just rotate, open, reposition, rotate, clamp down, and just keep doing that until I have a loop. So there is my nice, very, very simple clasp. Open that up a little bit. I like mine to be tight so that when I put it on, whatever I put it on won't slide out of there. But I just need it big enough to go through my jump ring. So this is going to be my clasp. How do I do that, you ask? Well, I'm going to grab your chain, open up the loop of your hook, just like I did with the loop on the ends of my cylinder. Just open it off to the side, slide the last link of my chain inside the big loop that was open, and close it back up. Yeah. There. So that side's attached. And I'm going to put a jump ring on the other side. Now, what's the proper way to open a jump ring? You can put a plier on one side, then the round pliers on the other. Now, I see people trying to do it like this. That's kind of hard because this is going to slip inside and you're going to end up with a kind of a bent up loop. So I line up the round pliers long ways up my loop, like so. And then I have the square pliers facing those other pliers. And then twist. Just twist it open. Nice and easy. Then I'm going to slide my jump ring or the last link of my chain into the loop of my jump ring. Just like that. And then close. Make sure that those ends are together and there's no gap in there. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our piece. All I have to do is connect. See, I like mine nice and tight. Squeeze that, tighten that, so that when I put it on my jump ring, it's secure. If I leave this open too much, it'll slide back out. But if I close it up nice and snug, it won't come out until I take it out. It won't come out until I say so. Get on there. There we go. So now one thing I wanted to say is this is very soft wire, and we didn't double up on this hook. So what you can do is take the end of your pliers and just kind of pound it a little bit, not too much. We don't want to flatten it or anything. We just want to strengthen it, just help strengthen it. So make sure you're not hitting your chain. But I just give it a little bit of a pounding. Flip it over, a little bit more. And that does what we call work hardening. The more you work with it, the harder it will get. And this is soft wire, so you do want it to harden over time. And if you ever make anything and you go back later and check it, start bending the wire, you'll notice that it's not as malleable as it was when you were working with it for your piece, which is good when you have a chain or hook, because you don't want it to be too malleable. You don't want it to be able to come apart. All right. Slide that in there. And there it is. There's my little necklace. Yay. How much easier is that? I thought I would bring this back out because I'm going to shape it a little. Because we did some little beads like this in class, and everybody just went crazy. They've been saying, we ought to do that again. We ought to do that again. So I thought we would just make a very simple bar necklace with some jump rings. I mean, with some seed beads for our piece today. And that is what we've done. So let's see what it looks like on a form. And there it is. There is our little necklace. I love this. I love it. It looks like a little, I don't know what that looks like, a little snail. Ah, it's suffragette colors. I can think of the goofiest things. But anyway, there it is. There's our piece. Very easy to make. A bunch of seed beads, some 20 gauge wire, a little bit of patience, wrap them around the cylinder, and there you go. And you can shape that any way you want. You can shape it into a half circle, a U shape. You could have shaped it any way you want because the wire is very soft right now. Again, it will harden over time to the point where you may not want to try to manipulate it because it could snap. But right now, oh, that's adorable. Anyway, that is our piece today, ladies and gents, and everybody out there. And I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you'll make one for yourself and look up the information about the suffragettes. It's pretty interesting, especially when you start looking up the information about these colors and how they got their little point across. Yay. So anyway, that's our piece for the day. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, let me know. If you didn't, let me know. I'd like to know what your thoughts are, what your suggestions are, and what you might like to see in the future. Because as you can see, I do listen to what you say. And if there's something that you would like for us to do and it's possible, I will do my best to bring it to you. So you can get in touch with me at jewelrygen20@gmail.com. That's JEWELRYGIN20@gmail.com. You can leave comments and pictures on the DeKalb County Library Facebook page. That's DeKalb. That's facebook.com/DeKalb Library, DeKalb Library, or you can leave comments only on the DeKalb County Library YouTube page, which is youtube.com/DeKalb County Public Library. You have to spell that whole thing out. DeKalbCountyPublic You leave me a comment. Let me know what you think, what you thought, and what you would like to see. And where you're from. I do like to know where you're from. I don't need your address, just the general location of the world. If you're in Philadelphia, Boston, I started to say Pennsylvania, Ohio, California. If you're somewhere in Europe, I would love to know who's watching these tutorials. But until next time, I hope you have a great week and an even greater weekend, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.